Okay, we have with us Jay Panda, who's a BJP MP and also National Vice President of the party. Thank you, Mr. Panda, for speaking to NDTV. My first question to you, sir. Official data has showed that NDA government, led by Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, has done a much better job in controlling retail inflation, specifically in food and fuel, also compared to UPA era. How do you see this, and what kind of policy measures do you think really helped drive this?
Well, this has been a continual trend, but let me just cite some figures. Now, in April 2025, the retail inflation has dropped to 3.16%, further below the 3.34 it was earlier. And this is well below the RBI's 4% target. I think what's important is this is not just a seasonal thing. This is, if you look at overall CPI inflation, 4.6% in the last fiscal is the lowest since it's been in 2018-19, just before COVID hit. And I think the even more remarkable than these two very positive figures is that post-COVID particularly, the whole world was hit very badly with the fiscal deficit going out of control for many countries, leading to high inflation. And India has performed remarkably well. It has performed among the very best of virtually all the nations in controlling inflation. Now, this is particularly important for us because as a developing nation, we are just in that early stage of middle income status, and we still have hundreds of millions of people who are very sensitive to price fluctuations. But I would conclude by saying that on top of this, I think the most remarkable aspect is that during this very period, India has consistently remained the fastest growing large economy. So you have an economy that is chugging along at a very fast rate. And on top of that, to manage to keep inflation under control, I think is a remarkable achievement that one should look at in a very unbiased and very positive manner.
So, Mr. Panda, you're not saying that this is, this is just a trend because of the harvest season, but also help us understand what do you think of the larger indicators in the data, because clearly it seems like the NDA government has done a better job in controlling retail inflation.
Well, first of all, I gave the example of this is a continuing trend of reduction, and even the entire last year, not just this post-harvest, the entire last fiscal year, we have been well below the RBI's target of 4%. And over the last so many years, we are better performing than most other nations. Now, look, this hasn't happened by accident. And you referred to geopolitics. Of course, the situation with the war in Europe, which has affected fuel prices, and with the tariff wars that have started from the beginning of this calendar year, and other uncertainties, including the hostilities we have just faced, these all contribute, and uncertainty always adds to pressures on inflation. But look at what the government has done. And this is what I mean by, this is not just something that has happened accidentally or due to good luck. It has taken a lot of visionary and difficult policy choices. So let me just cite one or two examples. For example, bolstering the buffer stocks of essential food items. This helped, and this is one very key aspect. Reducing GST rates on essentials. Another very important thing is, over the past decade, under Prime Minister Modi, our system of assisting the poorest Indians has shifted from a vastly inefficient system to the DBT, direct benefit transfer. So in terms of very big programs like PM Ujjwala Yojana and Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana, these have provided a safety net to hundreds of millions of Indians who needed it. And obviously that reduces the pressure on them to use their disposable income for essentials like food items. So all of these have contributed to keeping inflation, especially food and essential items inflation, well under control, while at the same time continuing to be the fastest growing large economy in the world.
So, Mr. Panda, so if the benefits of cooling crude oil prices are passed on to consumers, is there a potential for inflation to drop down further? Could petrol and diesel prices, which have been, a concerning factor, would you see them seeing a further decline?
I'm not going to speculate on how these things will play out, because there are so many factors that are beyond any of our control. What happens in Europe what happens in China. These are all factors that play into the global marketplace. I think the most important thing to understand is that the Modi government is not dependent on how the external world behaves for us to be at their mercy. We have taken very many positive policy steps. Some of them have required a lot of political will. Some of them have required the persuasive powers of the world's most popular leader in our Prime Minister to get these policies through Parliament and acceptable by people. So the balance that has been maintained, low inflation and high growth rate, this is crucial. This is crucial to the Viksit Bharat roadmap. That's where earlier you referred to how inflation was bad during the UPA era. It wasn't just inflation, growth was bad. So we had in that era low growth and high inflation, which is exactly the opposite of what India requires.
Right. But Mr. Panda also
we
now
have demonstrated for last so many years, and this has to be sustained. This is the
right. Also, Mr. Panda, with so many changes in this world, with reciprocal tariffs by India, India has also talked about this to WTO, Trump tariffs, and also trade deals working across different countries. All this happening in the last few months, and also the changes coming up in the next few months. What kind of macro picture of the Indian economy are we looking at?
So the world is undergoing the greatest upheaval in about 80 years or so. The post-World War II system of globalization which has existed, and how in the last 30 years we have seen that globalization system be gamed, be misused by certain countries. China, for instance, has taken advantage of being in the WTO and yet has not always played by the rules. These have all affected the global situation. Now, we are a realistic country. The fact that the West used to preach to us about open markets for a very long time and then itself has changed and gone. Many developed countries today are becoming much more protectionist. So our focus on Atmanirbharta, our focus on Make in India, in retrospect over what has happened in the last few years, has kicked in a very big way. So if you look at Make in India in the last 10 years, you look, for example, just look at the electronic sector. This is critical because part of the global supply chain which has got upended has to do with microchips being available, have to do with the large volume of electronic production and consumption where India has become a leading player now. For example, with Apple shifting a large part of its production to India. Look at the electronic sector, the rapid growth we have seen just in the 6 years between financial year 17 to financial year 2023. This sector has gone from $48 billion, more than doubled, to $101 billion. So these are just little nuggets of information you can find all across the economy. So I would say the following: we are well placed. We are a country which has much higher domestic consumption, for example, than China. And our export dependence is also less than countries like China. So adjusting our economy to the changing volatilities of the global marketplace, it's still a challenge because we are the world's fifth or fourth largest economy shortly. But the way the economy has been managed, I think must be appreciated. So we, relative to almost every other country, we are looking at a much better situation.
Okay, but Mr. Panda, whenever such data comes out, the Congress has always alleged that the government is concertedly attempting to manipulate the consumer price index, which is the CPI, and the wholesale price index, WPI figures, to show inflation as being under control. And they say that the ground reality, what the common man or common woman is facing, is non-stop price rise. How do you see such allegations?
I think it's just pathetic. I mean, everybody is entitled to have their own opinions, and Congress is entitled to have its own opinions, which of course does not get support from the voters of India or the population at large. But they are not entitled to have their own facts. So these are not just figures that the Indian government puts out. These are corroborated by multilateral organizations. I mean, look, for example, the largest number of people that have been pulled out of poverty. 250 million people have been pulled out of poverty in the last decade. This is not just an Indian figure. This is getting corroborated by multilateral agencies. Look at the fact that extreme poverty has dropped now to 1 or 2%. These are significant major achievements. These are not just numbers. These are real life, real fact. Now, the fact is, let me go back to another point I touched upon a little bit earlier. The Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Think about it. For 50 years, we'd been promoting grains with MSP and other such policies, and we had literally millions and millions of tons of grain that were not being properly able to be stored even. This win-win solution of distributing that to the poorest Indians has benefited a huge number of Indians, has given them a safety net from inflationary pressures. It has also provided stability to the marketplace. So these are policy choices. These are not easily implemented. It takes a lot of political will and dedication. These have contributed. You can't just make wild claims. You look at the facts, look at the actions behind the numbers that are coming out, which are corroborated by respectable organizations. So I would just say that I think if Congress wants to keep on making these kind of wild allegations, let them keep doing it. The lack of success that it has got them so far will only continue.
Right. Jay Panda there, BJP MP and also party's National Vice President, talking about larger structural policy changes for inflation hitting a